Welcome to the Righteous Revolution, a platform for black consciousness where we network, share ideas, build wealth, restore confidence, and build a strong black community worldwide.
What's going on, people? Hope everyone's feeling blessed, everyone's feeling calm, despite all of the madness that's going on. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about prayer and the importance of us knowing how to communicate to the Most High. Because nowadays we're caught up in religions, and religious practices teach us doctrines of men that are not of the Most High. I'm going to be reading a little text detailing an ancient way of practice. If you're religious, feel free to leave a comment on what your thoughts are regarding the text. And this is like a general summary of what prayer meant to people of the old days. You see, we're gonna look through how to communicate with the Most High. Alright, now check this out. It says here, prayer is the communication of the soul of man with the soul of God. It is the effective means whereby the great dam of spiritual power and inspiration is tapped into. Above all, it is not a bubble of words. When you pray, do so in silence, with all the words retained within yourself. Pray not with a tongue and mouth, but with the spirit. In harmonious noise within the sanctuary of God is detestable to him who is the God of harmony. Riots that produce loudness are an abomination to his ears. Implore him with a loving heart in quietness, and he will hear your words and accept your offering. The ear of God is closed to the man who speaks, but is open to the silent man. When he who is silent comes to speak, not that men may hear, but God, then he hears him. Is not the great God known among us as the listener in silences? Is not silence the speech of love? God speaks in the still silences. He communes with man in the silences of the soul, and in silence was the creative word spoken. Seek always after silence and quietude, and seek friends among the silent ones. The man who fears to be alone with himself in silence or solitude will never discover the secrets of the soul. Men go into the wilderness to commune with their souls in silence. Only thus do they receive a reply. He who lives ever among noise and turmoil says, I have no soul. When in prayer, occupy yourself with the affairs at the boundary of the region of hope. For prayer spans the great unseen barrier. Prayer is the bridge between two regions, but few there are among men who know how to pray, that the bridge may be open. Words are unimportant to prayer, for good and fine words alone are not edifying to God. He hears that which is spoken from the heart and reads that which is written in the soul. Therefore, those who are answered are few, and those who are not, because of their own indelicacy, say, where is God? And he hears me not. The souls of man, withered in flesh and wrapped in passions, cannot easily commune with God. Successful prayer needs much conditioning of the soul. It requires a lot of preliminary preparation, and it is therefore rare. Men say prayer is futility, and to such as they, it is, but it is not prayer but their conception of prayer that is futile. If a man writes so that none understand him, is the reader or the writer at fault? If the writing cannot deliver its message. When speaking to a southern man, he understands not unless you use his own language. Even so should you communicate with God in his manner. The ingredients of prayer are humanity, sincerity, surrender of desire, acknowledgement of indelicacy, and a wholehearted offering of self. It is the opening of a door to admit a wonderful power into the chambers of your soul. Prayer, as it should be, is followed by a profound peace, a spiritual uplifting, and a feeling of inner quietude, as though a cool, clean breeze swept into the spirit, strengthening and revealing its soul that clear thinking flows naturally. When at prayer, listen to the voice of the Spirit, for it may be interpreting the words of God. Prayer renders the soul articulately. The length of prayer isn't important, but the depth and the range of prayer matters above all else. Prayer is a state of harmony, embracing heart and spirit. It is not a riot. You see, now this is just a general summary of what prayer meant to the people of old, or to the forefathers that laid the foundation of what we know today as prayer, or the practice of prayer, of praying to the Most High. Now, when you start looking into the different religions and cultures, prayer starts to take a different outlook, and that's where it becomes a little bit confusion. It causes a lot of confusion, especially if you've been brought up believing one way, and then if you're shown something that's contrary to what you've believed, it's hard for you to embrace. So now if somebody tells you this is the way I communicate to the Most High, who are you to tell them that it's the wrong way of communicating? You see? And what I've just read is a detailed layout on what prayer meant to the people of old. Now it has different interpretations. It has so many different interpretations. But let's go back to the top where I started. It says here, prayer is the communication of the soul of man with the soul of God, right? Above all, it is not a bubble of words. You see that? That right there just kills many people's doctrines, because it's only when we go into churches or places of worship we start seeing a different form of prayer. And even in the scriptures it says, let me see if I can find it for you. I've skipped over here to the book of Matthew, chapter 6, verse 1. It says, "Take heed that ye do not your alms before men to be seen of them," right? "Otherwise ye have no reward of your Father which is in heaven. Therefore when thou dost thine alms, do not sound a trumpet before thee, as the hypocrites do in the synagogue and in the streets, that they may have glory of men. Verily I say unto you, they have their reward." You see that? And this is breaking down, what prayer, Christ is breaking down how prayer has changed form in the old days. Because in his period in a biblical history, it's talking about a time period in the Roman captivity, during the Roman captivity. And it says in verse 3. But when thou dost alms, right, let not thy left hand know what thine right hand does, that thine alms may be in secret, and thy Father which sees in secret himself shall reward thee openly. You see that? So this is talking again about that relationship between you and the Most High. It's the communication of the soul of man with the soul of God, in other words, whereby the great dam of spiritual power is tapped into. Okay? And it says here in verse 5, and when thou prayest, thou shalt not be as the hypocrites are, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and in the corners of the streets, that they may be seen of men. Verily I say unto you, they have their reward. I had to bring the scriptures because some people may think, well, that's your own interpretation. But as you can clearly see, prayer has fundamental meanings that many people miss, or they don't understand. There's always fundamental laws that do not change. They might take on different, slightly different. You might perceive them differently, but the laws remain the same. So the fundamental principles of prayer remain the same according to scriptures and ancient texts. But let's read further. It says here, inharmonious noise within the sanctuary of God is detestable to him who is the God of harmony. Riots that produce loudness are an abomination to his ears. Implore him with a loving heart in quietness, and he will hear your words and accept your offering. Okay? It goes further and says, the ear of God is closed to the man who speaks, but is open to the silent man. When he who is silent comes to speak, you see, not that men may hear, right? But God, then he hears him. Is not the great God known among us as the listener in silences? Is a question. Is not silence the speech of love? God speaks in the still silences. He communes with man in the silences of the soul, and in silence was the creative word spoken. You see. Now, even in scriptures, it tells you how Moses and other prophets they had to go away for a while to themselves in order to commune with their souls in silence. And then it says here, men go into the wilderness to commune with their souls in silence. Only thus do they receive a reply. You see? Because when you look around today, many of us are pretty much very, very occupied. We're surrounded with noise, surrounded with tons of distractions. So it's hard for us to actually get that moment of peace to ourselves. So when we do get it, we misuse it with just irrelevant nonsense, basically, that's only going to that tries to make us feel a little bit more at peace, like listening to music or doing something that we like. But that time is never enough. It's more of an escape from this reality. But in the ancient days, you could sit down and actually commune with your souls in silence, because it was a way of of communicating to the Most High, and it helped you render your soul articulate and find your faults and also your strengths. In other words, your blessings and curses. You see? And it says here, what is it? Prayer is the prayer is the bridge between two regions, but few there are among men who know how to pray, that the bridge may be open. You see that? Because nowadays prayer has taken on a different form. It's not compatible to the language our soul is trying to speak to us, or trying to communicate to us. So we end up mistranslating the information. Check this. It says, the souls of man withered. Sorry, I skipped a little bit. 1 second. Words are unimportant to prayer. You see, for good and fine words are not alone, are not edifying to God. He hears that which is written. Sorry, he hears that which is spoken from the heart, and reads that which is written in the soul. Therefore, those who are answered are few, and those who are not, because of their own indelicacy, say, where is God? And he hears me not. You see? And it further explains how the souls of men, withered in flesh and wrapped in passions, cannot easily commune with God. Why? Because successful prayer needs much conditioning of the soul. It requires a lot of preliminary preparation, and it is therefore rare. You see, there's also a profound question that's being asked here, right? If a man write so that none understand him, is the reader or the writer at fault if the writing cannot deliver its message? You see that? Let me say that again. If a man writes so that none understand him, right? So the author is writing something, but nobody understands him, right? Is the reader or the writer at fault if the writing cannot deliver its message? You see? And then it gives an example. When speaking to a southern man, he understands not unless you use his own language. Even so should you communicate with God in this manner. You see that? Because we knew how to communicate with God in the ancient days. We spoke to God often. It was almost like we had the Most High's phone number. But nowadays, it's like we've forgotten that phone number, or we don't have it. So we're not able to commune with God on such higher levels spiritually. So as you can see, the language is important here, because there's a way to communicate with God that unfortunately right now many of us are not able to do. And let me get into a little bit, because it says here, it breaks down the ingredients, some of the ingredients. We're not trying to say that this is the end all or be all of what prayer means, but these are some of the ingredients. It says here, the ingredients of prayer are humanity, sincerity, surrender of desire, acknowledgement of indelicacy, and a wholehearted offering of self. It is the opening of a door to admit a wonderful power into the chambers of the soul. You see that? Prayer, as it should be, is followed by a profound peace, a spiritual uplifting, and a feeling of inner quietude. You see that? This is what it's supposed to achieve, in other words, right? Feeling as though a cool, clean breeze swept into the spirit, strengthening and revealing it so that clear thinking flows naturally. You see? And it says here that it's important to listen to the voice of the spirit, because it might be interpreting the words of God. You see? The length excuse me. The length of prayer isn't important, but the depth and the range of prayer matters above all else. You see that? We've got to find a way to communicate to the Most High again, people. And like I said earlier, it's through silence and quietude we're able to tap into that higher realm of communication. But if we're ever occupied with noise and distractions all day long, you're not going to have that moment to have that personal dialogue with the Most High God, the Creator. Hope something I've read here has helped to enlighten, uplift, or to hopefully inspire you to do further research, because it's very important for us to be able to access some of these elements that we've left dormant all our lives. Basically, we've been taking on doctrines of men that haven't really led us anywhere. So we have to go back through the different texts, the different books, the different information, and break it down so that we're able to understand what the elders were saying, you know. And unfortunately, it's in so many different languages now, this information, that you have to do your research. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video. We're going to be going through a lot more topics to help uplift and inspire our people, because this is, again, a righteous revolution.